The Boeing 757 was a big success, and 1,050 of them were made before production stopped in 2004. Because of its long range and good performance, it became a popular part of flight fleets. Airlines are still looking for an alternative, and the Airbus A321XLR is only part of the answer. Would it be a good idea for Boeing to make changes to the 757 for its next mid-size plane and replace 737? The 757 planes. The 757 was made to take the place of the famous 727. This early trijet, which came out after the 707, did a great job for Boeing. It gave jets more options for shorter trips and airports with less space. Instead of 4 or 3 engines, airlines want 2 engines that can carry more people and work better. The 757 was made with this goal in mind. Boeing was already working on the bigger wide-body 767 when it made the 757. The 757 got parts from the 767, like the 2-person cabin, interior parts, wing parts, and aerodynamic parts. At first, Boeing offered the 757 in 2 different sizes. The smaller 757-100 would have about 160 seats, but companies didn't want it, so it was taken off the market. The first 757-200 was given to Eastern Airlines on January 1, 1983. A carrier version of the 200 was also made, and UPS started using it in 1987. Condor, a European airline, was the first to put the bigger 757-300 into service in 1999. The 757-200 has a range of 3,915 nautical miles or 7,250 kilometers, which is much longer than other narrow-body planes. It can easily handle trips from coast to coast in the United States as well as narrow-body routes across the Atlantic. The range of later narrow-bodies like the 737 MAX is still shorter than that of the 757, but Airbus long-range narrow-bodies compete. It's also known for being flexible and doing well in hot, dry, and high-altitude places. Because it has a better thrust-to-weight ratio, it can take off from shorter runways at a slower speed and climb very well. Because of these features, the 757-200 is very popular with U.S. companies, and all 3 of the biggest ones, American, United Airlines, and Delta Airlines, use it. American Airlines had the most planes, 142, but they were taken off the market in 2020 as part of a plan to reduce the number of planes due to the pandemic. Delta Airlines became the biggest operator after that, and it still is. In Europe, it's also a popular choice. British Airways was one of the first companies to use the 757-200. It had up to 54 of these planes in its fleet until it was taken out of service in 2010. Even now, Iceland Air is still a big company. The 757-300, on the other hand, was a special case because only 55 of them were made. Due to the larger size, there were fewer options and the selection became somewhat restricted. The 767 offered a lot more, but the fact that it was added to the plan late made it less popular. A revival of the 757 could be a good idea. If the range can be increased, the plane could sell well because it could carry more people and fly to smaller bases. Production is ending and there's no one to take its place. In November 2005, Boeing gave the 1,050th 757 to Shanghai Airlines. This marked the end of the 757's production, but the slump after 9/11 has cut demand by a lot and airlines are now focusing on smaller narrow bodies. This meant that Boeing had no other straight replacement for the 757, which is still true today. The 737 MAX can't fly as far or as fast as the 757 can in hot and short fuel conditions, but it is more efficient. Flight Global reported in 2015 that after this, Boeing thought about updating the 757 several times, but never saw a business reason to do so. There were also other reasons, such as the low desire for that type of plane and the high cost of making 757s. Boeing Vice President Randy Tensa said of the 757, that plane had a very unique way of making it. When compared to the 737, it was cheaper to make. Boeing's NMA. Boeing knew there was a need for a new mid-size plane, but they couldn't rebuild the 757. Instead, it started from scratch and made a new plane called the NMA, which stands for New Mid-Size Aeroplane, or the 797. This was supposed to be a new design meant to replace the 757, but most likely in the shape of the 767 widebody. A new plane was a hot topic at the 2015 Paris Air Show, where many companies showed interest in it. Reports say it would be better than the 757 in terms of range and capacity, with a capacity of about 220 and a range of 8,300 kilometers, 4,500 nautical miles. There was also a version with a bigger volume but less range. Even though big companies like United and Delta were interested, Boeing never started the project. And in 2020, the new CEO of Boeing decided to scrap all of the plans. Boeing gave up on the NMA plans because of a number of factors, including the deadly effects of the pandemic. Boeing was having trouble with the 737 MAX over and over again, which took time and money away from other projects. The A321XLR also made a stir when it came out. Boeing knew it had to change its plans because it was going up against a strong competitor. The NMA is being replaced by better options like the 757X. After the NMA was taken off the market, Boeing no longer had a mid-sized, long-range model. But now that the industry's getting better, Boeing may want to start over to keep up with Airbus' growing market share. Customers of the 757 have had trouble finding replacements in the past, so it's safe to say that Airbus has now moved forward with the A321. In 2018, the A321LR went into service, bringing the range up to 7,400 kilometers or 4,000 nautical miles. The A321XLR can travel up to 8,700 kilometers or 4,700 miles. Several companies think of the A321XLR as a replacement for the 757. It can carry as many people and go as far as the 757, but it doesn't work as well. The first test flight of the plane was done by Airbus this summer. Now, Boeing has a number of options for what to do next. Nothing seems unlikely since it would basically give Airbus the mid-size market. A brand new design from scratch would be great, but it would cost a lot more and take a long time to make and to bring to market. On the other hand, making changes to a current plane would be much faster and less expensive. It would also make it possible to work with older types. There could be changes to the 737, 757, 767, and 787. There's been talk of an upgrade to the 737 before, but if it's going to be a real improvement over the MAX, it's clear that a new design is needed. People also thought about a new version of the 767X. Most likely it would be built on the 767-400ER and have a General Electric Gen X engine. If Boeing chooses a wide-body plane, a modified 787 for short-haul flights is a possibility. At first, it was thought of making a 787-3 version with a capacity between the 787-9 and 787-10, 290 to 330 seats, but the same size as the 787-8. In fact, there are 787 assembly lines running at the moment. How could the 757 be brought up to date? To update the 757, the 757-200 or the longer, bigger 757-300 could be used. Boeing isn't expected to cut capacity and go back to the 757-100 model that was planned when the plane first came out. The 757-200 was much more popular, but the 757-300 may do better this time because it's better and has a longer range. New engines would be the most important change to the 757. Since the 757 was first made, engine science and efficiency have gotten a lot better. The Rolls-Royce RB211 or the Pratt & Whitney PW2000 is the engine for the 757. These engines have a lot of power and have never been used on a narrow-body plane before. To meet the power of the first 757, new engines would have to be made. In 2015, Liam News looked into this idea and found that the most likely option was Pratt & Whitney. It would have to use a metal body instead of the composite design that the 787 and A350 use. But this hasn't stopped the 737 and 777 from changing into new versions with better engines and wings that make them more efficient. But the shape of the wing could be changed to use more composite materials. There could also be a bigger range. Some of this would be because of better fuel economy, but bigger fuel tanks could also be looked into, especially if the 757-300 is seen as a possible replacement. With the A321LR and A321XLR, Airbus has done this, of course. The A321XLR has more fuel tanks and better landing gear to make up for the extra weight. Will it really happen? Boeing needs to make a clear choice in the mid-sized market. It knew this before the NMA plans, and the early success of the A321XLR by Airbus has made it even more important. Some people have even said that Airbus might go even further with an A322 stretch, but this seems to be just a myth for now. It may have bought some time for now with the current market slump, but if the market turns around, it'll have to move quickly to catch up with Airbus. Thanks for watching this video.